Tonight on News Center, exactly 3 weeks left until this country heads to the polls to elect members of the 20th National Assembly. Political parties are racing against the clock to finalize their candidates list. What we are learning of Tuesday's horrible terrorist attacks in Brussels, the latest, 2 men behind the explosions are brothers, one at Zaventem Airport, the other at Melbeek Metro Station. North Korea ups its colorful rhetoric against South Korea. Seoul warns Pyongyang that it will be held accountable for any kind of provocations from here forth. News Center begins right now. It is 10 a.m. in Buenos Aires, 2 p.m. in Brussels, and 10 on a Wednesday night here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to our viewers all across the globe. You're watching Arirang News Center. I'm Daniel Che, filling in for Moon Ganyang. But just 3 weeks to go before Korea heads to the polls for a general election, the country's political parties are racing to wrap up a chaotic nomination process before candidate registration begins tomorrow. But with the nomination feud, parties don't seem to be united as a whole. Shin Se-min updates us on the ever-changing complexion of the local political realm.
On the last day of the candidate nomination period, the ruling Saenuri Party said goodbye to 2 more of its lawmakers. It's the latest in a series of defections from the party by lawmakers who have been eliminated from the nomination process. A key member of the pro-President Park Geun-hye faction, Yoon Sang-hyun, said Wednesday he will run as an independent after he was left out. In a recently leaked phone call, the president's former special political advisor was heard using a profanity while criticizing party chair Kim Moo-sung. In the meantime, the ruling camp's leadership and nomination committee have yet to decide the fate of another key member, Yoo Seung-min. Yoo is the party's former floor leader and was an ally of the president until last year when his criticism of her policies led to a split between the two. The delay in the nomination committee's announcement is cutting Yoo's options. The continued delay is giving him no time to announce an independent run and leave him with no option but to leave the party. Over on the opposition side, after threatening to leave the party following a conflict over the camp's nomination process, the interim chief of the main opposition, Minju Party of Korea, said he'll stay put and focus on winning the election. At a press conference on Wednesday, Kim Jong-in also accepted the party's request that he retain his number 2 spot on the list of candidates for proportional representative seats. The announcement came 3 days after he had boycotted all party affairs following an uproar in the party over speculation he had put himself on the list, giving himself a much better chance of retaining a seat in the National Assembly. Regardless of whether the parties are able to resolve their internal issues or not, the candidate nomination process comes to an end on Thursday, and all prospective candidates will begin registering their bids with national election commissions on Thursday. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A South Korea-Japan summit may be held in a little more than a week from now, which would be the first one after the 2 countries' landmark agreement reached last December on Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women, meaning follow-up talks on the issue are likely to be on the top of the agenda. Kwon So-ah looks into the possibility and the purpose of that summit.
The leaders of South Korea and Japan could soon hold their first bilateral meeting since last year's landmark agreement on Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Japan's Asahi Shimbun newspaper reported Wednesday President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are working to arrange a meeting on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit that kicks off in Washington at the end of this month. South Korea's presidential office of Cheongwade has not confirmed the report. But if the summit does occur, follow-up measures on the implementation of the so-called Comfort Women deal are expected to top the agenda. President Park and her Japanese counterpart held their first bilateral meeting in November last year, where they had vowed to fast-track their discussions on Japan's wartime sex slavery issue, leading to an agreement on December 28th. On Tuesday, the first working-level talks follow-up plans took place in Tokyo, with a focus on the creation of a foundation through which the Japanese government will compensate the victims. According to a government official Wednesday, related ministries and experts are involved in discussions, but there doesn't seem to be a blueprint yet. There is no time for much delay, though, considering that only 44 victims are alive today. Another concern is that doubts of Japan's sincerity towards the matter keep arising, including speculations regarding the removal of a statue located in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul and which symbolizes the comfort women. 88-year-old Lee Yong-soo, one of the surviving victims, said Wednesday, just the thought of removing the statue breaks her heart and makes her angry. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus to inter-Korean issues, South Korea warned the North to stop slandering President Park Geun-hye after Pyongyang upped its rhetoric another notch. The latest threat out of the regime is being viewed as a protest against tough new UN sanctions and the ongoing Seoul-Washington combined drills that might be a little too close for the communist state's comfort. Connie Kim has this report.
A, quote, retaliatory battle of justice to eliminate President Park Geun-hye's supporters was a message on Wednesday from North Korea's Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland, which also warned that South Korea and the U.S. face a miserable end. The message issued on Wednesday is an apparent protest against a South Korean Air Force drill this week that simulated an attack on a key North Korean facility. Ratcheting up the rhetoric against the South, the committee also said the warfare could start inside or nearby the presidential office of Cheongwade. It added its multiple rocket launchers are ready to target the presidential office at any moment. Seoul's Unification Ministry called on North Korea to stop making these base and vulgar terror threats and warned it would counter future provocations.
If North Korea carries out any kind of provocation, the South Korean military will punish Pyongyang sternly and ruthlessly. North Korea will be fully responsible for its provocations.
North Korea usually makes verbal threats during the annual South Korea-U.S. military exercises. But the severity of this year's reaction is raising tensions on the peninsula to new heights, especially with the new UN sanctions recently imposed on the regime. North Korea has launched 15 short and mid-range missiles since its long-range ballistic missile launch in February. In another move that adds to the North's missile technology, online news site Washington Free Beacon reports that North Korea conducted a ground test of its new KN-11 submarine-launched ballistic missile at the Sinpo shipyard located on the country's east coast. The ejection test conducted on March 16th is the latest since North Korea said it successfully tested a SLBM in December. North Korea is expected to keep up its rhetoric until the military drills are over as a form of protest and as a way to consolidate the regime. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Let's talk national defense now. Seoul and Washington will add another layer of aerial defense to the pre-existing Patriot missiles on the peninsula with the deployment of the U.S. Advanced Missile Defense System known as THAAD. That's according to Ashton Carter. For more on the U.S. Defense Chief's comments, here's Kim Yeon-bin.
U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter says that South Korea and the United States have agreed in principle to deploy the U.S. anti-ballistic missile system, known as THAAD, to the Korean peninsula to better defend against growing missile threats from the north. Speaking at a House Armed Services Committee hearing on Tuesday, Carter said the system would protect the whole peninsula, South Korea, and guard a U.S. troop presence here against North Korea's missile threats. The U.S. defense chief added that Washington has started to boost its capabilities in light of North Korea possibly having the capacity to range the U.S. with an intercontinental ballistic missile. The two allies began official talks on possibility of deploying THAAD shortly after North Korea conducted a long-range missile launch earlier last month. China has been against the deployment as it sees the system as a threat to its security, despite repeated assurances from Washington that the system is aimed purely at deterring North Korean missile threats. Rose Gottemiller, Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, says Washington is hoping to hold talks with Beijing to address its concerns about the deployment, and according to Reuters, stressed that the U.S. and South Korea had just begun discussions and no decision had been made. She also said that THAAD is truly only capable of defending the territory on which it's deployed, and is not capable of the kind of reach that the Chinese seem to be afraid that it has. North Korea has carried out a series of missile launches since the start of the year, launching 2 mid-range and 6 short-range missiles in less than a week. Military officials say the firings appear to be an armed protest against the ongoing military exercises between South Korea and the U.S. that are scheduled to run through April. Kim Han-bin, Arirang News.
And now for the latest on the situation in Belgium, hit hard by multiple bombings by ISIS. We have our correspondent Jack Parrock standing by to keep us up to date on the developments in Brussels. Jack, what's the situation like there, and what do we have on the third suspect who was on the run?
At the moment, we are getting conflicting reports of whether Najim Lashrawi, the 25-year-old hunted by police, has been arrested. We had media reports earlier this morning that said that this man had been arrested. He's the fugitive that escaped the Zaventem airport following the attacks up at the airport on Tuesday morning. 2 explosions there killed at least 11 people, many more injured, and an enormous security operation was mobilized here in Brussels to try and find Najim Lashrawi. Now, there is speculation that he is a Islamic State bomb maker, in fact, and that he had travelled to Syria in the last couple of years or so and could have potentially linked up with the Islamic State group there. Here on the streets of Brussels, we have seen vigils, 1-minute silences held firstly here at the European Commission building, the Berlaymont, which is only around 500 metres away from the Malbec train station, which was the second location for the attacks here in Brussels, and also in the Grand Place, which is the iconic square in the centre of Brussels. There's been a big vigil held down there. The city is waiting to hear whether this man has been arrested, obviously on tenterhooks. His arrest will settle the minds of the people living here in Brussels, who are obviously very affected by these attacks. We've seen major operations going on across the city with sirens ringing out throughout the night as the 1,600 military and police personnel that have been deployed to the streets of Brussels try to prevent further attacks and try to capture this fugitive.
All right, thank you for being out there for us, Jack. Our hearts are with Brussels and the families of the victims, as well as everyone in Europe, as this is the second such senseless attack in the region. That was our Jack Parrock reporting live from Brussels. Brussels, the Belgian capital of 1 million people, is also home to the EU and NATO headquarters. It is also where important political economic decisions are made in Europe, making the Tuesday terror attacks even more shocking. Our Kim Ha-sung tells us more about what this attack means.
2 terror attacks hit Brussels Tuesday morning, just 4 days after the surviving Paris attack suspect Salah Abdeslam was successfully captured in the same city. Now many are asking, why Brussels? Salah Abdeslam, a French citizen of Moroccan origin, grew up in the heavily Muslim district of Molenbeek, 5 kilometers west of Brussels. 4 of the 9 Paris attackers planned the attack from Molenbeek, and the attacker's suspected leader is also of Belgian nationality. Belgium has basically become a breeding ground for Islamic extremism. According to the International Center for the Study of Radicalization and Political Violence, 400 Belgians have joined the Islamic State as of 2015. If we look at this in terms of per capita, this is the highest ratio in Europe. In Molenbeek, Muslim immigrants struggle to integrate into society. Youth unemployment rate is as high as 40%, leaving many alienated and exposed to being recruited by Islamic extremist groups. Regional experts point to Belgium's largely decentralized security system as another factor that makes the capital of the European Union more vulnerable to terrorist attacks. The European country's intelligence agency has just 600 people, a third the size of its neighbor, the Netherlands, and its systems are mostly outdated. According to the UK-based newspaper Telegraph, corruption in public service and fragmentation of police forces make it difficult to cooperate.
The OCAD has decided to bring the security level to level 4, which means additional safety measures, the reinforcement of border controls, and limits on public transport.
It is unclear when the city will return to normal, but what is clear is that the latest attack is adding to the debate over whether Europe can and should maintain its open-door immigration policy and regional integration. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
And back here in South Korea, the government laid out plans to prevent the spread of the Zika virus after the country confirmed its first case this week. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Korean government officials and representatives from the ruling Centre Party met at the National Assembly on Wednesday to discuss preventative measures against the Zika virus outbreak. At a briefing after the meeting attended by Health Minister Chung Jin-yeop and the Director of the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Chung Ki-seo, the group announced plans to increase the number of inspection and quarantine units in the country. They also plan to put a system in place by the end of the year that would enable authorities to track locals who visited an affected country using the mobile roaming service.
The system would also enable authorities to keep track of people who visit an affected country and come back to Korea via a third country.
On Tuesday, Korea confirmed its first Zika case in a 43-year-old man who showed symptoms of infection after coming back from a 22-day business trip to Brazil. The man recovered after being hospitalized for a day and was discharged on Wednesday morning. The KCDC director said a secondary infection from the man is highly unlikely and reiterated that the Zika virus is not airborne and cannot be transmitted through physical contact with an infected person. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, yesterday we took a look at the challenges Korea's fashion industry face. Today, let's zoom in on how those in the industries are finding new ways to build on the unique qualities of K-fashion and overcome adversities. Here's Hwang Ji-hye with the last of our two-part special.
This district in southern Seoul, bustling with young Koreans, is now one of the city's most popular tourist attractions. A major reason for that is the street fashion shops lining the sidewalks of Garosu-gil.
Korean clothes is cheaper than Japan and more fashionable. It's provide us with a reasonable price. So with that reasons, I think it's good for us to go shopping around.
And the so-called street fashion of Korea that incorporates Seoul's overall pop culture driven by Korean celebrities and entertainment content is what many point to as the hotbed of Korean fashion. Chung Gu-ho, director of the ongoing Seoul Fashion Week, says Korean fashion has carved out a niche for itself.
Foreign fashion weeks focus on high-end brands, but Korea's fashion week features clothes with more street and pop culture elements, and that's what foreign buyers and the press are interested in too.
The rising brand value of the capital city of Seoul is also drawing major fashion houses, which have begun to recognize its rise in the world of Asian fashion. Chanel brought its cruise fashion show to Seoul for the first time last year, and French lifestyle brand Maison Kitsune paid tribute to Korea in its 2015 fall-winter collection. Chung also says fashion is part of the culture boom driving the larger Korean wave.
What clothes Seoulites wear and what they eat and the culture of the city in general seem to be garnering interest from around the world these days.
Chung, who's a successful designer himself, adds that to survive in the already saturated industry, local designers need to take advantage of Korea's internet infrastructure.
Focusing only on the local market is no longer working. Designers should think of the global market as a city and find ways to promote their brands and communicate with their customers. These days, they can do it using social media.
He adds this is also a way for them to cut costs in the current economic downturn. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Korea and France celebrate 130 years of diplomatic ties this year. To mark the occasion, Paris celebrated Korea Year by lighting up the Eiffel Tower in a hue of red and blue symbolizing the Korean flag. Lee Min-young fills us in on how Seoul plans to return the favor when France Year in Korea kicks off this week.
Korea and France are en route to celebrate their 130th anniversary of starting diplomatic relations, which falls on June 4th this year. And to commemorate the milestone occasion, the France Year in Korea kicked off on Wednesday, which will showcase about 350 events in various fields, including culture, education, and economy. The France Year in Korea is part of a joint program by the two countries that started last year in September with the Korea Year in France event. The programs aim at having citizens of Korea and France to experience and enjoy each other's culture without having to travel. During a press conference on the upcoming events, Henry Lorette, chief of the French side organizing committee, said that he hopes the exchange year would help the two countries reinforce bilateral cooperation in all fields and further develop their relations to create a comprehensive partnership. The commencement of the France Year will be highlighted by several eye-catching events taking place in the Korean capital of Seoul, as well as the southern port city of Busan this month. On Thursday at the Gwanghwamun Plaza in central Seoul, world-famous French designer Jean-Charles de Castelbajac will showcase an installation art exhibition on the statue of King Sejong. Also, the food festival called So French Delice will take place in the same venue, featuring a variety of French cuisine dishes prepared by some of the best chefs of France. Autophiles in Seoul and Busan will get to witness the performance of the French rock star Matthew Chedid. And for all fashion lovers out there, Dongdaemun Design Plaza, also in Seoul, will host special events such as internationally renowned French fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier's Fashion World Exhibition. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Headlining our stories from around the world today is the U.S. presidential race. Businessman Donald Trump and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton move closer to seizing their party's nominations in that race for the White House. Bruce Harrison joins me live with more on the election. Bruce, Donald Trump, what can we say about him? Some call him the material guy as he continues to provide, of course, countless materials for political satirists and comedians, as well as writers around the world. But he, of course, is a steamroller that keeps on going and does not stop.
Oh, yeah, Daniel.
What happened on Tuesday?
Well, the Trump train rolls on. Big wins for Donald Trump and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Arizona. That state had the most delegates at stake on Tuesday. But once again, don't get ahead of yourself. They weren't able to entirely neutralize their challengers, both Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and Texas Senator Ted Cruz. They both won in Utah, and Sanders winning in Idaho as well to stay in the race.
Well, to some politicians, their brand is crisis, and of course the situation in Brussels will be able to be sort of a difference maker in some some camps, I believe. The Islamic State, fighting against Islamic State will be a very core topic during this election cycle. What did the candidates say on Tuesday after that tragic terror attack in Brussels, Belgium?
Sure. Well, this happened, as the results were trickling in. So obviously they had to address this. They've been talking about Islamic State already. It will continue throughout the campaign. First, they offered their condolences for the victims, and they seized the opportunity as well to speak about their policies countering the Islamic State, which has claimed responsibility for those bombings in Brussels.
It's important to understand what happened today was not a lone wolf. It was not an isolated attack, but it was an act of war.
We need to forge a coalition of the Muslim countries in the region, including some that have not been as active as they should be, with the support of the United States and other major powers to finally destroy this barbaric organization.
Former Secretary of State Clinton stressed the importance of working with allies to make the U.S. safe. Trump, meanwhile, said during an interview on the Today Show that torture could produce useful leads in situations such as the Belgium attacks. It's still unclear if Trump can win enough delegates to win the nomination and avoid a contested party convention this summer. And though Clinton maintains a strong lead, enough delegates remain, and Sanders could still technically pull off an upset, though unlikely at this point. Europe's largest floating solar farm has powered up to generate energy and save space at the same time. Roughly 23,000 solar panels, which equal the space of 8 soccer fields, float on a massive water reservoir outside of London, utilizing a previously redundant space.
Really, water and electricity not being the best of bedfellows, it sort of creates a number of sort of unique challenges. Albeit it's like any engineering feat. You break it down to its constituent parts and you plan.
The solar farm covers around 10% of the surface area of the reservoir and cost about $8.5 million to build. And though the energy will be used to power a nearby water treatment facility, the floating pontoon of power is capable of powering up to 1,800 homes in its first year alone.
And now we're going to turn our focus to a brand that's struggling to keep up with Samsung, is what I would like to believe. But of course, we have a good rivalry going on between Samsung and Apple. But today's focus is Apple. And the theme of recycling and renewing continues with this story, Bruce. Apple has unveiled a robotic system to recycle iPhones. This could be compared to scrapping old cars in the junkyard for valuable parts, right?
It's essentially a salvage operation. So this new system takes apart junked iPhones and recovers valuable materials that can be recycled. We're talking about silver and tungsten. The system's been under development for a few years now, and it will initially focus on the popular iPhone 6. Apple has even given the system a name, Liam.
It's pretty cool, right? There's no other machine in the world that can do what Liam can do, and it was conceived and designed by Apple engineers right here in California.
Apple's aiming to address criticism that while its products are sleek and seamless in design, its tight construction makes them difficult to disassemble, refurbish, and reuse.
So, Liam, does it have a particular set of skills that makes it a nightmare for certain people around the world? But I doubt that's the reason why they chose the name, right?
It's just a bunch of robotic arms that come together to pull apart the iPhone and salvage, as I said, valuable metals and whatnot.
Right, a very welcome addition to those who are looking forward to the fourth industrial revolution, with AI being one of the top agendas or top headline makers these days. But of course, Apple easily overlooks some of the simple things like finicky chargers, right?
Sure, yeah. I always carry a spare because, you know, it's unlike the other mass-produced chargers in this world. You need a specific iPhone charger if you're going to keep your device powered up.
Right. Their uniqueness is sometimes their greatest strength and their weaknesses.
Yeah, good for sales.
Well, thank you so much for those stories today, Bruce.
My pleasure.
Now it's time for some weather updates, so let's connect to our Lee Ji-hyun standing by at the Weather Center. Ji-hyun, the day started with dusty conditions, then things turned windy and chilly.
That's right, Daniel. Now, smog blanketed capital this morning, and it did look pretty bad. But northeasterly winds cleared out all the dust in the afternoon, but it also brought chill to the air.
That's right, Jen. I heard that it's pretty hazy, and when we thought spring was in full swing, the mercury is expected to drop tomorrow. What's worse is, for those who can't stand a cold or carrying an umbrella, snow in Gangwon-do province today, right?
That's right. Now, spring snow has been falling in the mountainous regions in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces. And up to 7 centimeters of more snow is in the forecast till tomorrow, with a heavy snow advisory in place. And tomorrow morning, many parts of the country will have winter-like morning lows, including Baegwalyeong in Gangwon-do province, where the low will go down to -8 degrees Celsius, -2 over in Chuncheon, and Seoul will also wake up to a 1 degree Celsius, which is about 3 degrees lower than seasonal averages. On that note, let's move on to tomorrow's temperature readings for other parts of the country. So while the capital wakes up to 1 tomorrow, Daegu and Busan will get up to 5 and 6, and Jeju will also wake up to a low of 5 degrees Celsius. And as for the daily highs, it will go up to the double digits, but it's going to be a couple of notches lower than today's, Seoul topping out at 11 degrees Celsius, 12 over in Daegu and Busan, and even Jeju will only see a high of 10 tomorrow afternoon. But thankfully, cold conditions will be short-lived and things will return to seasonal averages by Sunday. Just beware of big temperature gaps and strong winds, and be sure to dress accordingly and drink plenty of water, because the things will only get drier by the day. Now that's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
That's our broadcast on this Wednesday night. I'm Daniel Che. Thank you as always for staying with us, and we do hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow on News Center.